Good evening. My name is Len Foy, and I am the president of Foy Law Office and the star of this video. In all seriousness, hopefully this is not the first video that you've seen, but my name is Len Foy, and I'm a real estate attorney in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I have been making video presentations about my office, myself, and my firm and our services for certainly a year. It may have even been longer than that. And no matter how many videos I make, the first portion of the video is always terribly uncomfortable, with a lot of umming and stammering by yours truly. So I don't know that I'll ever get one of these videos off to the kind of start that I'd like to, because I always seem to begin on this sort of nervous and just choppy start. And this video is no exception, so certainly no one will be disappointed. But what I have rededicated myself to doing is to making more videos, because we were making quite a few of them last year. We received a wonderful and positive response. I got busy and I didn't make any more videos. I'm still very busy, but I just want to continue to try to turn these out, not just because I think that they're fun and informative and tell people about myself and my journey and my office and our services, but because frankly they're fun to make. There's something about making videos that I enjoy. So I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to try to stop stammering, and every time I say I'm going to make a mental note of it. Hopefully you'll do the same. And my goal is to produce a video with none of that. So, it is November 16th, 2015. This year is just about in the record books. It's been a wonderful year. It's been a successful year. And it's been a profitable year and a busy year. So this year has fulfilled and satisfied all of my expectations, professionally, personally, and otherwise. This is a good time, I think, to do a video, and the subject is certainly going to be a little bit on the morbid side, but it's a subject of death as it relates to real estate. And when I say death, of course, I mean, in most instances, we're talking about the death of a loved one, but it could be the death of a partner, a business partner, who may also be a loved one. Death is such an awkward subject. I'm going to do the best I can. It may not be the most politically correct or PC presentation of the subject that ever went down. I tried to do a video last week on this, and it was not smooth. It was choppier than this video, and it was filled with all these disclaimers and advisories and couching and massaging. And death is a very uncomfortable subject. Anyway, it's certainly not a subject that I'm comfortable with at all. But I think it makes it a more uncomfortable subject for me to stammer and constantly try to couch things and massage things and include all kinds of disclaimers and advisories before I actually say anything. So let's get all the disclaimers and advisories out of the way all at once, and then we won't revisit them. It's an awkward subject, and it's an uncomfortable subject. And that's why there are so many people who die without a will, without a plan, without an estate plan. Why properties wind up in limbo, legal limbo, personal limbo, limbo within families. So obviously death is an awkward subject. It's an uncomfortable subject. People don't approach it perhaps as soon as they should or as frequently as they should. Certainly not when it's necessary to do so. It leaves property, real estate in the lurch. It leaves families in the lurch. I'm sensitive to it. I've been affected by it personally. And so I just want to begin on a note of saying that I'm utterly sensitive about this subject and what a personal subject it is and what an uncomfortable subject it is. And I'm making this very brief video for the purpose of alerting viewers of this video to the legal issues which might arise and how they might try to get in front of those legal issues, and how contacting my office could be a way to address those issues affirmatively. So, with all of that legal mumbo jumbo out of the way. And it's not mumbo jumbo, but it's just the kind of thing that a lawyer would say before making a video like this. With respect to these videos, this second generation of videos, they're much shorter, they're much briefer, they're more succinct, although I probably have already burned through a considerable amount of time. We haven't even gotten to the substance of it yet. But in all seriousness, the videos that we were making last year were 20, 30, 40 minutes in duration. They're wonderful videos. Please go back and watch them. They're rich with content. These videos are going to be a little on the tighter and more succinct side. We're trying to identify issues, raise awareness, create interest in the subject matter at hand, excuse me, but not overdo it and not overtreat the subject matter. And then if people want to call my office, that door is wide open for people to do so, and we can discuss the issues more thoroughly, more privately, and more specifically to the situation, to your own private, personal situation. So with all of that, death is obviously very tragic on a human level, but it can also have catastrophic financial impact on people who are not prepared for its consequences. And I think the clearest example of that in the real estate context is when you have property titled in an individual's name and you don't have a will or some other kind of estate plan offering legal direction as to who is going to inherit that property in the event of that person's death. And of course, death is sometimes untimely and it sneaks up on us. So when it does, sometimes we can't be prepared for it, but we must try. And so what I would encourage people to give some thought to is, if something were to happen to you, what would happen to your interest in every piece of real estate in which you have an interest? And so I think the most common ownership model for families, for people, is for spouses to co-own property as either joint tenants with rights of survivorship, or in Massachusetts, tenants by the entirety. And basically what that means is that if something should happen to one of the spouses, their interest automatically reverts to the surviving spouse without probate, without the need for any legal proceedings. The filing of a death certificate typically will make it official. So that obviously is a situation where property is transferring very neatly and very easily and very inexpensively, because there's no need for probate, there's no judicial involvement. That's a clean example. Trusts also can leave owners of property with a neat and inexpensive legal outcome. The impact of death may not be neat, and it may not be inexpensive, and it's certainly horrible and sad. But with respect to real estate, trusts can often manage the direction of property following the death of an owner, whether it be a trustee or a beneficial owner. Trusts have a mechanism for that, so that the property will flow essentially from one trustee to another, or from one beneficiary to another. So trusts can be quite valuable in that regard, and certainly my office prepares trusts. So if that's something that interests you, please contact my office. I would conclude by saying that one of the most troublesome ownership models where death is concerned is when property is owned by several individuals as tenants in common. Now, I wouldn't want this to be misunderstood. I'm not bad-mouthing the notion of holding property as tenants in common. There are certain instances where it's the only rational way to hold title to property. And I don't want this video to be too lengthy, and I don't want to get off track. If you have questions about owning property, more building block, more elementary questions like, what is a tenancy? What are tenants in common versus joint tenants with rights of survivorship? So if you don't have an understanding of tenancy, and I realize a lot of people do not, then please contact my office and we can discuss some of the building blocks which are the foundation essentially for some of these more complex or advanced issues. But when two individuals own real estate as tenants in common and one of them passes, their interest does not go to the survivor. Their interest, whether it's a 50% interest or whatever their interest is, passes through their estate. And so what I see happening almost over and over again are people coming to market, whether it's selling a property or attempting to sell a property or list a property, and they haven't got the ownership piece of it nailed down. So two people own property as tenants in common. One of them passes and the other one goes to sell the property as though they own the entire property, which they do not in most cases. In some cases they do if there's a will and the will directs that they are to inherit the deceased party's share. So certainly there may well be a mechanism in place that accomplishes that, but of course if that had been the intention of the people that owned the property, then they probably would have been joint tenants with rights of survivorship in the first place. But I don't want to rule it out as being theoretically possible. It is possible. So these are just a few examples of how death can affect the ownership of real estate and how it can leave the survivors in a state of, possibly in a state of having everything completely under control, or alternatively in a state of legal limbo where an estate needs to be probated, or in some cases what's called a license to sell needs to be obtained by the probate court. These are things to be considered. So I think that the upshot of this video, hopefully the takeaway from this video would be that if you have any questions about your ownership of property, specifically if you co-own real estate with another individual and you have questions about the tenancy, whether you're a joint tenant or a tenant in common, maybe a tenant in common who's deceased and their interest needs to be dealt with either judicially or through some other means, then please contact my office. Again, this is a very difficult subject, and this is a subject that has touched me personally, even recently, in fact. And once we get through the painfulness of the loss, we then transition into the legal consequences of a person passing and what it means, what it requires from us, whether it's we have to go to court, we have to see a lawyer, we have to prepare some documents. I think those documents should be prepared in advance. I always tell my children have an interest in legal matters, and of course hearing some of my war stories and seeing me in the office or seeing me in action, and I'm always fond of telling them one of my favorite anecdotes, which is that Howard Hughes, who of course I've always thought that he was the richest man in the world, but if you look this up you'll find out that he was not, but he was certainly among the richest men in the world when he passed in the 70s, died without a will. Of course, you'll see some argument about that too. There's some debate. There are people that think that he had a will, and then of course there are a bunch of fake wills floating around. But I think it's fair to say that he was among the richest men in the world when he passed, and he did not have an estate plan that I think a lot of ordinary citizens might already have. So it's not as if this is something that eludes working class people only. I think even some very wealthy people have not paid sufficient attention to what's going to happen to their property and to their possessions after they pass, who will be provided for, who won't be provided for, and in what way. And I just think that it's something that we all tend to overlook or want to overlook. And I think it's important that it not be overlooked. So I don't know how long this video has raged on. Hopefully it hasn't gone on too long. And the subject matter is very difficult, and again, very personal to me, and I have suffered the loss of a loved one quite recently, and I'm still coping with that. and you spend the rest of your life coping with the loss of a loved one. But shortly after, the immediate effects of that loss start to dissipate. The legal and financial consequences come to the forefront and need to be addressed. So I think that if you're going to take something away from this video, it might be get in front of those issues beforehand, have an estate plan, have your property in a trust, give some thought to how you co-own property and with whom you co-own property and what is the plan, so that people aren't left in the lurch, so that people aren't sitting in a lawyer's office after you pass unsure as to what to do or how to pay for it or how to make it happen, what needs to happen. There's a way to prevent that kind of uncertainty and that kind of anxiety, and it's to try to do something in advance. But if you're on the other side of it, if you're watching this video and you've lost a loved one, and there's real estate involved, and the fate of that property is in question or up in the air, then please contact me. And again, I always want to be careful around this subject. It is somewhat of a radioactive subject. I certainly would not want this video to be interpreted as my soliciting people who are in the immediate aftermath of losing a loved one. I just think that's a very tender place to be, and I would not want this video to be viewed as exploiting that in any way. So certainly if you're in the immediate aftermath of losing a loved one, it might be too soon, frankly, to even be considering legal issues or calling an attorney. So I want to be careful there. But if you have questions about real estate as it pertains to death, the loss of a loved one, how to get out in front of some of these issues, how to be proactive, how to devise an estate plan, whether it be a trust or a will or some combination thereof, power of attorney, please contact my office. My name is Len Foy. I'm a practicing attorney. I'm a real estate attorney primarily, but I've been practicing law for over 20 years, and in all that time, I've handled almost every kind of case. So I consider myself as knowledgeable about the legal profession and the practice of law as anybody out there. It just so happens that for the last 10 years, my practice has been primarily a real estate practice. We have a wonderful office. We have a large, kind, helpful, and informative, experienced, sophisticated staff. Myself and a managing attorney, his name is Nick Mason. 3 full-time paralegals, all of whom have many years of experience as real estate paralegals. A wonderful office manager, and then we have a back office, a cast of thousands, as they say. IT people, phone people, underwriters, people that handle all of our legal issues, internal and external. So this is a legal office. This is a first-class operation in every way. So if you need anything, please call my office. My phone number is 603-598-4030. My email address is LFOY, so that's first initial and last name, LFoy, at foylawoffice.com. We're on the internet. Our web address is www.foylawoffice.com. If you want to send us a fax, please send me a fax. I'm not being facetious. It's late. I've been working for, 12, 13, 14 hours. I'm punchy. But in all seriousness, if you want to send us a fax, please send me a fax. I respond to all of my faxes. Our fax number is area code 603-598-4020. If you want to send us a fax that converts your fax to a PDF, we have that. It's 1-800-573-1640. I'd give you my cell phone number, but I prefer only to be contacted on my mobile phone if it's of an urgent nature or if it's friends and family. But under certain circumstances too, I do give my cell phone number, so I don't want you to think that I would never give it to you. I just don't put it on the internet. At any rate, my name is Len Foy. I have to say I enjoy making these videos very much, so I'm going to keep making them. I'm going to keep finding new things to talk about. But tonight has been somber. This is not an easy subject for anyone. I've lost some family members whose loss I mourn every day, and I probably will until the day I die. So death is just something that's very personal. It hits very close to home. And when you lose a loved one, you're impacted for the rest of your life. I think most people watching this video and beyond realize that instinctively, intuitively about death and the loss of a loved one. But with that, I'm going to thank you for watching my video, which I appreciate very much. And I hope that you will contact my office if you have any questions about real estate, whether in this vein or regarding any issue, whether you're buying, selling, or real estate, buying, selling, or refinancing real estate in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, or Rhode Island. Excuse me, not Vermont. We're not licensed in Vermont. And in Rhode Island, I have to say I am not admitted as an attorney. I am licensed to conduct real estate transactions in Vermont. So if you are buying real estate in Vermont and you are using a lender or you're purchasing title insurance, we can help you. But I'm not admitted as a lawyer there, so I can't practice law in Rhode Island. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope it's been informative, notwithstanding the difficulty of the subject matter. And I look forward to making another video soon, which will be more upbeat and on a more positive note and a happier subject. Have a great November and a great Thanksgiving, if I don't make another video before then, and a great holiday season. Thank you so much for watching my video. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.